The foundation of a great final image is a great RAW file, and today we're talking about 5 essential camera settings you need to know to get the best images possible before they even hit the computer. Having a great RAW file gives you the most flexibility in editing, and it starts with nailing your exposure. There are a couple tools built into your camera that can help you do this. The first tool is the light meter, that little scale at the bottom or side of your screen, 0 in the middle, positive numbers to the right, negative numbers to the left. When you point your camera at your subject, you'll see an arrow along that scale. The positive numbers mean your exposure is too bright, the negatives too dark. 0 is what your camera thinks is the perfect exposure for that scene. So your job is to move that arrow towards 0 using the 3 main exposure settings: aperture, shutter speed, and ISO. Here's a really quick explanation if you don't know those already, but I think the best way to learn them is to just muck around and make mistakes. Aperture is the size of the opening in your lens and controls how much light comes in, as well as how much of your image is in focus front to back. A wide aperture, a small number like f1.8, is what gives you that blurry background. Shutter speed is how long your sensor is exposed to light and controls brightness and whether motion is blurred or frozen. It's usually measured in fractions of a second. And ISO is your camera's sensitivity to light. It starts at 100 and you can raise that number to make it more sensitive to light for darker scenes. But when you start to go too high, you can introduce noise or grain into your image. So every stop on that meter means double or half the light. Light is measured in stops. So +1 is 1 stop too bright, -1 is 1 stop too dark. On most modern cameras, each click of your dials moves your exposure by 1/3 of a stop. So 3 clicks is 1 stop. For example, if your meter reads +1, you can fix it by going 3 clicks faster on your shutter speed, from 1/100th to 1/200th. Or you can go 3 clicks smaller on your aperture. That's a bigger number. Or 3 clicks lower on ISO. Any combination works as long as the total equals 1 stop. The only caveat to this is that some entry-level cameras change ISO in full stops, from 100 to 200 to 400. Doubling the number is 1 stop, but the principle is the same. Adjust until that arrow hits the exposure that you want. Now, the light meter is great, but it's not always perfect. Our cameras can't see as great a range of light to dark as our eyes do. So sometimes in scenes with dark shadows and bright highlights, even though the meter is at 0, your sky, for example, can still be overexposed. So when you're exposing your image on a digital camera, what you want to do is called exposing for the highlights. Sometimes you want to intentionally underexpose your image by 1/3 or 2/3 of a stop, so you can retain highlight detail and then lift your shadows back up in editing. Digital cameras these days have great shadow retention. The RAW file keeps a lot of information in the shadows so you can bring them back in post. But overblown highlights won't come back, which is why we expose for the highlights. Shadows recover, overblown highlights don't. So even when an image looks dark in the RAW file, you can often bring back lots of detail in post. And because you exposed for the highlights, that detail is already there too, which leads to a more natural looking final image. This is why you want to be shooting in RAW instead of JPEG. You're not able to push and pull highlights and shadows as far on a JPEG file. They just don't retain as much information as a RAW file. And if you want to be really sure that your file has the most information possible, because sometimes it's hard to tell whether a bright part is overexposed or not, you can use the histogram. That's that little mountain-shaped graph that you can pull up, usually by hitting the info button on the back of your camera. The histogram is a visual representation of the light levels in your image, with the black point all the way on the left and the white point all the way on the right. The rest of the brightness levels are represented across the graph. A good exposure spreads across the middle without hitting the walls on either side. If it's pushed up against the left side, it's way underexposed. When it's pushed up to the right side, it's way overexposed. I use the histogram all the time in tricky lighting scenarios when I'm not totally sure if I have all the information in my image. The back screen or electronic viewfinder aren't always perfect, but the histogram doesn't lie, so it's a great safeguard if you're unsure whether your exposure is right or not. When all the information is spread out without being pushed up against either side, you're going to have the most flexibility in editing to make your file look the way you want. Moving on, shutter speed is probably one of the easiest settings to mess up as a beginner and will have the biggest effect on your final image if you don't get it right. Having the right shutter speed is often the difference between your image coming out blurry or coming out sharp. There are two main factors that can cause an image to look blurry, besides just being out of focus. Those are camera shake and motion blur, and they can both be fixed with shutter speed. As steady as we think our hands might be, most of us can't handhold our camera at just any shutter speed. There are actually micro movements of your hands and vibrations, even from just pressing the shutter button, that can be picked up by your camera and cause an image to come out blurry. So the general rule of thumb to minimize camera shake is to set your shutter speed to double your focal length at the minimum. So if I'm shooting on a 50mm lens, I want at least a 1/100th of a second shutter speed. If I'm shooting on a 24mm lens, I can go down to 1/50th of a second. If I'm at 200mm, I need to go way up to 1/400th. You get the idea. That's for camera shake. There are things like image stabilization in your lens and cameras with stabilization built into the sensor that help you shoot at slower shutter speeds, but the general rule of thumb for most scenarios is shutter speed at double the focal length. Motion blur, on the other hand, comes from not using a fast enough shutter speed to freeze a moving subject. Intentional motion blur is kind of trendy right now, shooting with slow shutter speeds on purpose to capture movement, but if you're like me and not really into that style and you prefer to freeze action, you're going to need certain shutter speeds to be able to do that. Here's a quick guideline. Generally, when I'm shooting street photography where people are walking around, I'm between 1/125th and 1/250th, again, at the minimum. You can get away with slower depending on the scene, but this is a good place to start. If I'm photographing scenes with faster moving subjects, maybe I want to freeze small birds in the sky, I'm probably around 1/500th of a second. And when you get into things like sports or any sort of high pace action, I'm at 1/1000th or faster. Of course, every situation is different, but these are a good place to start. And you can always go faster than these numbers. If you're freezing action, going faster than necessary to get the right exposure isn't going to hurt you. You just have to be conscious of going too slow. And if you're unsure, open the image on the back screen and zoom in to make sure that it's sharp. The final essential setting I'm using on every single image is white balance. I almost never use auto white balance anymore. I just kind of find it boring. It makes images too perfect, so I prefer to set a manual white balance using one of the presets built into the camera based on the look that I want. You can, of course, change white balance in post when you're shooting in RAW, but I like to have the exact look that I'm going for dialed in while I'm on location. What this often looks like is shooting one preset above or below what the actual conditions are. So in daylight, I'll often shoot cloudy white balance. This makes the image warmer because cloudy light is cooler than daylight, so the camera is compensating for that. But since we're not actually shooting in cooler light, you get an image that's warmer than real life. In cloudy conditions, I might shoot shade white balance. And when it becomes nighttime, I might stay on cloudy or daylight if I want a warmer look, or I might drop down to white fluorescent or tungsten if I want a cooler look. I like to look at white balance as a built-in creative tool for my images. It's like a style I can apply right in camera to make my photos look a certain way. White doesn't have to be white. If you're trying to create a mood and atmosphere to your images, experiment with this one and see what kind of looks you can get. And that's your 5 essential camera settings I use every single day. If you learned something new today, hit subscribe if you haven't already, and check out last week's video about the 3 pillars of a great photograph. We go beyond settings and talk about the foundation of how to create better photos anywhere. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.